Welcome to the Guaranteed Irish Business Podcast, where each week we're joined by the amazing leaders of Guaranteed Irish member businesses to chat all things business, sustainability, buying Irish, promoting Irish jobs, community, provenance, and so much more. Sponsored by FBD Insurance, Ireland's largest homegrown insurer. Support. It's what we do.
Hello and welcome to the 150th episode of the Guaranteed Irish Business Podcast. Thank you to all our listeners out there who've been stalwart supporters, and we're delighted to reach and celebrate the 150th episode of the Guaranteed Irish Business Podcast. And I'm Brid O'Connell talking to you today. Joining me is, to celebrate the Pharmaceutical and Healthcare Month, is Brenda Dooley, founder and CEO of Access Healthcare Consulting, the preferred strategic partner in Ireland for pharmaceutical companies requiring expertise in market access, and I'm delighted to say a Guaranteed Irish member. Brenda, you're very welcome.
Thank you very much, Brid. And let me start by congratulating you on your 150th podcast. It's an absolute pleasure to be here this morning, and well done to you and your team.
Quite an achievement, yeah. And thanks to all the team behind the scenes for making it happen. But yeah, we're delighted. And of course, we wouldn't have those episodes if we didn't have members who have stories to tell, all success stories coming out of Ireland. And great to be able to be part of that and putting a little spotlight on all those various businesses. Brenda, Access Healthcare Consulting. Tell us, in a nutshell, what that is and what it does.
So, Brid, we are a STEM business focused on health economics, and specifically we help the developers of new medicines achieve market access through securing pricing and reimbursement.
So market access means getting into a new market.
Effectively and importantly, securing funding for your new medicine. And you secure funding from the payer in the locality that you're trying to launch your medicine into.
So in Ireland, it's the HSE, I'm assuming?
Yes, the HSE.
Okay,
yeah.
So for all those new medicines coming onto the market, what your job is to get them on there, get them paid, so that our patients can get the treatment they need.
Ultimately, that is the goal for all of us. And there's really a community of stakeholders, Brid, involved in this journey. And it is a journey, and a difficult journey for so many companies. But ultimately, what we are all trying to do is make sure that patients receive new medicines that are going to obviously make a difference to their health outcomes. But that journey requires scrutiny, it requires evidence, and it requires really, really compelling evidence so that the payer can make the right decision, ultimately on behalf of us, the taxpayer, because it's, taxpayers' money ultimately that is funding new medicine. So it's an important journey for so many of us in this community.
So HSE for Ireland, NHS for the UK, and of course every market and every country has its own health authority. Huge amount of knowledge required there. So I am really interested to understand, and we'll come back to the role of Access. How did Brenda Dooley set up Access and become CEO? It's your own business. You're female amongst many men, I would imagine, in that space. Tell me a little bit about it. I'm intrigued.
Well, I suppose my story goes back to school. I loved science, and particularly biology. So not too surprising that I ended up working in the sphere. I got science on my CAO, but I decided to opt for nursing instead. So that's
Fabulous.
the route I went. General nursing, paediatric nursing, into the dental, and then eventually joined the pharmaceutical industry, where clearly I had many different roles. And then one of the most interesting roles that I was exposed to, and I suppose I got my teeth into, was this whole area of pricing and reimbursement, and how do you show the evidence in a compelling manner. So I worked then through many different companies in the pharmaceutical space, namely Abbott, Pharmacia, and then Pfizer. And in Pfizer, I took on the role as the director for market access. And after a period of time, I thought, there's an opportunity perhaps to start my own business. I returned to college and I did my master's in health economics, which at the time was not that common. It was very much a new entity, and I set up the business 11 years ago. So,
oh, well done, Brenda. I have to ask you, when you were inspired to go back and do your master's in health economics, was it 50-50 male-female, or was it predominantly male?
I would say more females undertaking the course. Which is fantastic to see. But in the world that I now operate in terms of, looking at comparable agencies that run market access, Ireland, UK, there are very, very few female-founded, female-owned, managed companies. And that's been researched actually by ISPOR, which is the group that look into pharmaceuticals or pharma economics. And that's a real shame, because somewhere along the lines from having that skill set, which a lot of women have and gain it, the development into being into senior management roles is perhaps not as good as it should be.
So I'm interested in that from the point of view of having, I suppose, the courage to set up your business. Very few women do that. Is that a problem we have coming out of Ireland? Is it across all markets? Do you see it? As you said, it was 50-50 to the master's level. So the interest and the ability clearly was there. Where did it fail to get more women into this space? Because, you're really running on your own there in the female space at the moment.
Yeah, and it's a really good question, Brid, and it does concern me a little bit in terms of, women in business overall, women in STEM businesses in particular. And there's a couple of interesting statistics to think about here, and one in particular which comes out of the STEM Education Review Group, and they have cited that in 2018, women comprised only 25% of the Irish citizens working in STEM. So only a quarter actually working. So while STEM and that whole area of studying those very, very important subjects at school, which there has been a lot of investment in, somehow that materialising and even into people just working in STEM is not following through. So we're getting there, we're seeing more women coming through, but there are very few leaders. And again, other estimates would suggest only about 17% of CEOs are women. So that's less than 1 in 5.
Yeah,
that's
a long way to go.
A long way to go.
The number of female-founded and female-run STEM businesses is growing, Brenda, but it's still very small, isn't it?
It is, Brid, and it should be of a concern to all of us, men and women, and indeed our entire economic future, because while we are seeing that women are comprising about a quarter of Irish citizens that are working in STEM, what we're not seeing is a translation from those working in STEM to those actually moving forward into senior management positions and ideally as CEOs. And that is of concern, and I do think about this a little bit as to why.
So what's the answer to that? Why? Have they made the decision, or have they been the infamous glass ceilings here that they just can't get past that?
I think it's probably a little bit more nuanced. I think it possibly is linked to confidence in women, confidence, and perhaps a perceived risk linked to the likelihood of success. And every entrepreneur lives with that constantly, but has to get comfortable living with, predictors of success. I think we see amazing female role models out there. If you look in science, for example, Dr. Catherine Moran is the first female neurosurgeon in Beaumont. Aileen Rogers recently, the colorectal surgeon in the Mater. But there's still only 10% of practicing surgeons in Ireland that are women. So we need, I think, to see a lot more female role models, because I think that is important for us. We need to see female CEOs in STEM businesses. So hopefully, as myself, as one of those women, that there'll be a greater community, because certainly I would welcome that. More of a peer group as well.
A lonely place for you at the moment, Brenda.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm really interested to get under the bonnet of that. There is a reason that they're not making it. Is it that they need to further upskill, so they're not just they're not just in the space of STEM and science, they're actually also have to have a business head as well? So is there that piece missing maybe?
I absolutely think so. And I read an article last year in Fortune, and it talked about a new STEM. And the new STEM, in addition to clearly what we all understand as the STEM, is S for sales, T for theatre, E for entrepreneurship, and M for management. So teaching our young women as they come through their courses and their qualifications, those skills, that's what they will need in senior management positions and ultimately as CEO. So we've got a gap there, and that will have to be addressed if we're going to really build the experience that women need to become the CEOs of the future.
Yeah, and I actually see it in so many other walks of life and other businesses we work with, not even in the STEM area. So you see people who are very proficient and excellent at their job, and then they get into the CEO role and they've no experience in managing. And that is the piece that's often missing. You even see going from a teacher to a principal. There is a management role there as opposed to a teaching role. So I totally understand that, and I think there is real opportunity where they need to upskill and be upskilled, and for that to be recognised. Is there a desire for that within the pharmaceutical sector and healthcare sector, do you think? Or is there even an acknowledgement of it?
I think there probably is. I mean, when I worked back in Pfizer, I was one of only 3 women sitting on the senior management team amongst 7 or 8 men. Great team, but clearly not necessarily the right mix. I think there are some companies that have changed that. There are some amazing female leaders, including Mairead McCall at MSD, and that's wonderful to see.
Yeah, wonderful.
But I'd like to see so much more of it because, women are talented. In my own company, I have a tremendous team of people. I have some amazingly talented women. And my job and their job in turn, as they start to lead, junior members of my own team, is to learn how to manage, learn how to bring the best out in people. And then that experience clearly sets them up for these future CEO roles that we really do need to have. And there's great female mentors out there. All we have to do is just look around and find them and be inspired by them.
You'll find very few people who won't want to help. They'll all row in. And actually, there are amazing champions of women in the male department as well, and we must make sure to acknowledge them, but we do need to redress the balance. And it's great that you're bringing it to the attention on today's podcast, and it's certainly something we need to discuss in greater detail. What hurdles have you come across in your business that could be easily overcome?
So one of the challenges that we have, and we have had since the day I started working in this field, is recruiting qualified and capable health economists. There is one university down in Galway that has a master's programme in health economics. No others at the moment. So that is the only opportunity, I suppose, for graduates to come through. Of course, they can get qualifications elsewhere, and that can be still a throughput. But I think we need to see far more investment in health economics so that you have more people graduating. I think the other thing, when you think of Ireland, yes, of course, there's a role for the Irish community of stakeholders for reimbursement of medicines in Ireland. But with all that's happened with Brexit, Ireland has the potential to be the gateway into Europe. We are the English-speaking community. We operate to the highest standards in terms of how we evaluate medicines, with the team at the National Centre for Pharmacoeconomics every bit as good as what is perceived as gold standard in the UK, and that is nice. In fact, gold standard globally. NCP would be right up there. So we have an opportunity. It will require some changes to how we do things, and indeed to how pharmaceutical companies engage with the system here. And what I mean by that, perhaps just to explain, is Ireland is often left as a last or latter market. And so this launch sequencing, where Ireland is left to a later time point, is a disadvantage. And if we can find a way where Ireland becomes further up the line of priorities,
or even a test pilot,
exactly,
a small market,
then we have a roadmap for reimbursement throughout Europe.
So in terms of market access, which is really the service you provide for your clients and for pharmaceutical companies out there within the pharma industry, why is it so important for the company to have the correct structures to make sure they're doing their part on the timeliness piece?
A report was published by Deloitte, set in the context of the US, but it talked about shareholders and the investor outcomes, I suppose. And one of the biggest areas where companies are failing and falling and failing to meet expectations is in market access. So they haven't either spent the right resources, spent the right amount of time planning and preparing for market access. And when you think about the investment that's made on the regulatory side in terms of getting your clinical trials, huge cost. Clinical trials all done to address what is important because the regulator needs that evidence. But the same amount of investment needs to go into addressing what the payer needs. So giving them the evidence that they need. I've mentioned it already, relative effectiveness data, not always there. Quality of life data, not always there. And that's really, really important. If you're charged as a payer with making a decision to allow a new medicine to be funded, you need the evidence, and it has to be presented in a way that all payers, not just in Ireland, are looking for. So we're seeing a big divergence between the regulator needs and the payer needs. That's something that's been discussed, at European level. How to address it is really going to be within the hands of the pharmaceutical companies. So an appreciation of and an understanding is going to be very important. The other thing, and we're sort of seeing this happen a little bit with some of our clients, is how is market access established and organised within companies. So having a market access person who is charged with doing all of this work is not enough.
Is it not? Because I would have assumed all pharmaceutical production companies would have had that.
So market access, when I started Brid 11 years ago, I suppose I was probably one of the first people that held the title of market access manager, market access director. Over the last number of years, there are lots of market access managers. What I'm suppose emphasising is that within companies, a market access role is not the same as fully embracing and integrating market access within an organisation. So we see some of our clients working where they have a market access team. Of course, there's a market access manager whose role it is to bring that team together. But that needs to comprise of your regulatory person, your medical person, of course, your general manager, your commercial person, the person who's out talking to the clinicians who can bring intelligence in from unmet need. You need to bring a body together and really have market access at the core. And that's not yet there.
And does Access Consulting offer the training then and the upskilling for pharmaceutical companies to provide that?
We do. We do a lot of training. Every year we do 2 masterclasses, which are hugely well attended. And indeed, through the COVID pandemic, when we switched from in-person to virtual, we saw our numbers literally go through the roof. We would have had 80 to 100 people per masterclass. We have a big event happening at the end of February. It's Ireland's first ever patient access conference. And we have a fabulous lineup of speakers that are coming together to talk through that journey of a medicine in Ireland, all the different steps from research and development to clinical trials, the assessment by the various agencies, and then finally into the hands of the patient.
Oh, really interesting. And when is that and where is that on?
That's on in Dublin, in the RCPI at Kildare Street, and it's on Thursday the 23rd of February.
Okay, well, the very best to look to that. And it sounds like a very interesting event and useful one. It's great to see a company such as yourself in Access producing opportunities, I suppose, for people to speed the process up, because that's the long and the short of it. We need those drugs to our patients. And that's actually saving lives. So tell me a little bit about those challenges that you're finding, even on behalf of your clients, to speed that process up.
So one of the areas that we have been emphasising, and we've spoken quite a bit about this, is with companies around how they're launch sequencing. So a lot of our clients are sitting in the UK. They're responsible for England, Scotland, Wales, and of course submissions to Ireland. And they tend to follow a sequence, so a priority. So England is first, Scotland is second, and Ireland is third. And usually there's a time lapse there, which is again part of the reasons why submissions in Ireland take longer. What we've been saying to companies that there are different ways of taking that approach, and we've suggested to companies that perhaps they consider Ireland and Scotland in a parallel approach, because you've pretty much submit the same type of evidence. Of course, you've got to differentiate it for local payer needs, but you can move Ireland up so that you're starting that journey earlier. And if you start earlier and you therefore have the information that is going to be sought, for example, you need to have updated systematic literature reviews. There can be a time gap there just simply because it's past the date that's needed, because a company has done it as a submission in England, and then a year goes by and they're only starting to think of Ireland. If Ireland was moved up earlier, that delay wouldn't be there. So there are ways which companies themselves can address.
Obvious, isn't it? And what's the cog in the wheel? What's stopping that from happening?
Like everything, resources. So when we hear that, we just finished a piece of market research with companies in the UK, and it's about resources. So if you've only one market access manager sitting in the UK and they're responsible for submission to NICE and SMC and the NCP, that's an awful lot of work. These are very complex, detailed submissions. Yeah. So resources it's always going to come down to resources and supports. But again, that's why I think I emphasise market access cannot fall on the shoulders of just one individual. It's just too big.
But I assume the large pharmaceuticals are seeing that now and responding and building out those teams, or are they?
Oh, some of the big companies, absolutely, they will have big teams, and that serves them very well because they have plenty of resources to be able to support. But the mid-sized companies, not so. They'll be lucky if they have one market access manager in the UK. Some of them may have somebody here in Ireland, but not necessarily, which I suppose is where a company like we come in, because we partner with companies. We help, fill that void in terms of what's needed, how to get what's needed, so that you can expedite your submission and not be delayed because of something that was avoidable. There will be delays in the system. We have to be, sensible and realistic. There are delays because, the process here does take a little bit of time. But if we can avoid the delays that are on the side of the company or the client, then we should.
And I have to ask you the question in relation to 18 out of the top 20 global pharmaceutical companies are based here in Ireland, or have a presence here in Ireland, shall we say. And we're delighted to have them. They're big employers. They're great to the communities. A lot of the consumers don't really know what goes on behind closed doors in the pharmaceutical world. It's always quite secretive. And I know it's very heavily regulated, and it needs to be, of course. How do you think the pharmaceutical companies who do have a base here in Ireland can can engage and educate the consumers more about the industry, because surely the consumers, which ultimately as an ageing population are going to end up as patients and in need of their help, can become part of the voice and part of the solution to, spurn the likes of the government on and speed things up, basically.
Absolutely. And I think groups like IFA have done a tremendous job.
And that's the Irish Pharmaceutical and Healthcare Association, for those who don't know it.
Absolutely. And they have done great work in trying to promote awareness of just what the pharmaceutical companies are doing. But there can be so many and so much more done, I think, in that area. Because you're right, we are the taxpayers. Ultimately, we are funding these medicines. If we understand as a society a little bit more about what that journey is about, how well medicines are assessed, both from a evidence point of view, security, safety, but also from a budget perspective and an affordability and value for money. If that journey was a little bit better understood, I think patients would also have a higher appreciation for the medicines that they do receive, because that's the other thing, is that when we get medicines and we haven't necessarily paid for them at the point of purchase, you sometimes might not fully appreciate the medicine that you have finally in your hand.
A very valid point. So this is not a bashing at the government. It's actually saying, look, they're doing a great job, but we need things done a little bit more quickly, more efficiently, and everybody needs to be on the same page here, Brenda, is what I'm hearing. And I suppose if the patients, the pharmaceutical company producers, manufacturers, etc., and obviously the HSE in this country, NHS in the UK, are working together, things can be improved, I'm hearing. Am I right in saying that?
100%. I think we are all on the same side. Yeah. We are a community of stakeholders. Each of us in our various roles, whether you're the payer, the assessor, the funder,
or the taxpayer,
we're all ultimately trying to get good quality medicines and novelty. Like, there's amazing technologies coming through. We're in an era, personalised medicines, targeted therapies, curative. So we are all on the same space, but we have to recognise, and I would be the first to say this, respect the roles that each stakeholder has to play, because it is a journey, and we do need that thoroughness and assessment done
100%.
So that when a medicine is finally reimbursed, we all feel, that is deserving of the funds that are going to be allocated.
And I know that we really support the pharmaceutical industry here in Guaranteed Irish, but we're not pharmaceutical people, but we certainly like the idea of pulling all those businesses, support those jobs, those communities, and innovation and opportunities that come to Ireland. And you're going to be joining us in an upcoming event, which we'll speak about in a moment. But in terms of trying to get a group, I suppose, together, is that group really IFA for the various organisations to have the one voice to speak through?
So I think it is, and IFA is a great representative of so many of the pharmaceutical companies, and has a voice. There are perhaps companies that are not members of IFA, and some of those are represented by Medicines for Ireland, and they represent clearly the companies that bring forward generic medicines and biosimilars. And then there are other companies that just are not members of any of those organisations. But together, again, I think there's a great benefit in collective discussion, and collaboration in order to help. I think we know what the problems are. It's not really identifying the issues, but to see how we can work
the solutions. Together. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm really interested to see that happen, and we certainly will be putting our money where our mouth is and supporting the pharmaceutical industry here in Ireland. They've been a great employer, and they do bring innovations, and they're very, very good at what they do. So let's try and all get on the one page and push together. Now, you're speaking at the upcoming Guaranteed Irish Pharmaceutical and Healthcare Forum. And of course, we always celebrate pharmaceutical sector in January each year in Guaranteed Irish. The topic this year is the pharmaceutical industry in Ireland. What's next? So what are you expecting from the event? And what is next from the pharma industry, in your opinion, Brenda, to finish on? Big question.
I am really looking forward to the event next week, both as a panellist, but also as a participant, in the sense of hearing from the other great panellists. You have a superb lineup there. Must again congratulate you on that, Brid, because it's what we need, is to bring together individuals from various different sectors that can really contribute and help us all think about this, because the future, it's coming quite quickly. If you think about the pace and the rate of change that we're seeing with these new technologies. So I think there was a time we talked about new innovative medicines. I feel there's a big shift now towards what I'm going to call novelty. The focus is on the novelty, and that in itself is going to challenge us, because we're going to have really, really amazing technologies coming through that are curative, but they have a hefty price tag. So grappling and dealing with that is something all of us need to think about and to start working towards, because it's already here. It's not even into the future. It's going to come more and more. There's a lot of changes happening in the European level that will impact us here locally. European regulation from the pharmaceutical side, that will, for example, mean there will be joint clinical assessments in the next couple of years. So you will have agencies, a central agency assessing that clinical effectiveness component of what we would have had historically done within each affiliate or each country. So
that
that's
does
going to
make
bring
more
changes.
sense, though, doesn't it?
Absolutely, much more efficient. That should speed up as well the time to access. Each individual country will have to look at their own particular cases with regards to unmet need, local practice, of course, and affordability will never be far from the agenda. Absolutely.
So, in terms of novelty, then, do you mean by specific to each individual person? Is that what that means?
Yeah, well, personalised medicines, the CAR-Ts, the gene therapies, targeted therapies, that really mean that we, with the Human Genome Project, of course, it's changed the landscape. So now we can receive medicines that are specific to our gene makeup.
Well, there's a whole other discussion about to open up here about, are we going to live till we're 150 now, Brenda? So before we get into that, I think it's an absolutely fascinating area. You bring it to life. You really explain it clearly to people who are not in the same space. And you're a real ambassador for women in the STEM area and entrepreneurialism. So congratulations. And thank you so much, Brenda, for joining us today. And to all of you for listening to the last 150 episodes of the Guaranteed Irish Business Podcast. And it's here we discover and unveil great people and entrepreneurs such as yourself, Brenda, and so many more. 2023 is set to be the biggest year of the podcast to date. So don't forget to hit subscribe wherever you're listening and leave us a review if you like the episode. Thank you, Brenda.
Thank you, Brid. Thank you so much.
The Guaranteed Irish Business Podcast, sponsored by FBD Insurance, Ireland's largest homegrown insurer. Support. It's what we do.